What is going on, White Sox fans? My name is Michael Suareo, and welcome to the newest episode of Pipeline to 35th, a monthly Sox on 35th show where we keep you up to date on everything going on in the White Sox farm system. We have an exciting show for you guys today, and there's a lot to get to, so much that I was not able to cover it all myself. So, joining me today is fellow Sox on 35th contributor, Noah Phalen. Noah, how are you doing, my man?
I am good, Michael. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you on. There's a lot to talk about in the farm system, which is good because there isn't much to talk about with the major league team right now. I think a lot of us are bigger fans of the Barons than we are of the actual Chicago White Sox right now.
Absolutely. And keeping an eye on those box scores for sure.
Oh, for real. I'm on MILB.com way more often than I am for anything Chicago White Sox related right now. So we got a lot to talk about today. Recently, we've had a few call ups, a few send downs, so I want to get started there. Most recently, Bryan Ramos, who spent the last month with the White Sox after getting promoted straight from Double-A Birmingham, has been sent back down, but he is down in Charlotte now. So he is now with the AAA squad. So they are calling it a promotion. It's still kind of a demotion, but he has at least worked his way up the minor league system. So, Noah, I wanted to get your thoughts on what you saw from Bryan Ramos in that month he was with the White Sox, your thoughts on him as a prospect, and what you hope or expect to see with him down in Charlotte.
Yeah, I think it was a good tenure with the White Sox, kind of a good taste of what the major leagues are like. I wasn't really expecting him to be a permanent call up when he came up because it was kind of a situation where they didn't have any other infielders on the 40-man roster, and so they had to bring him up because they needed somebody. But I mean, you guys saw the first few weeks he was doing pretty well. He was seeing the ball well, putting together good at bats. And when he came back from the injury, he started to kind of falter a little bit. I think pitchers kind of made some adjustments to him, and then he went back down, which I'm okay with. I liked what I saw from him. I think he's got potential on both sides of the ball, and I don't think this is the last we're going to see of him this year.
No, I agree. It definitely should not be the last we see of Bryan Ramos this season. I know there was some backlash when he did get demoted. I think a lot of people were just hoping that he would stick with the Sox the rest of the season just to see what he's capable of. But you said it, after he came back from that injury, it seems like the scouting report was finally starting to be complete on him. And once he came back, he went through a pretty rough stretch there, and I think this will be good for him. He's got some lessons to take from his stint with the White Sox. He had a lot of positives in that month-long stint. Defensively, I think he looked more than capable of handling third base. Offensively, I think there's still a lot to like with him. So I think just let him go down in Charlotte, which is the AAA equivalent of Coors Field. Just let him mash some dingers down there, honestly, get that confidence back up. And one thing that I was interested to see actually is his second game back. He actually got some time at second base, which he does have some previous experience there down when he was in the lower minor league levels. And reports weren't that bad on him playing second base. Most people still thought he was more of a natural third baseman and that would be his ultimate long-term home. But if you can add some versatility with Bryan Ramos there, I'm okay with it. I think it's worth a shot to get him some time at second base. I don't think we have a surefire long-term answer at third base. We don't necessarily have one at second base, but we don't necessarily have one at third base either. So I think getting him some time at both positions is well worth it. But we also had a couple promotions from high A to Double-A. Both actually came in the same day, and both are relatively highly touted prospects in Jacob Gonzalez and Noah Schultz. I want to talk about Jacob Gonzalez first, though, because he's a guy that had a lot of. He was a polarizing pick, to say the least, when the White Sox first made the pick. there's questions about his ability to stick at shortstop with his athleticism, and some people just wanted to see them go for a bigger swing at that pick. And unfortunately, he didn't have the best professional debut, which was then capped off with an offseason tweet by the Chicago White Sox highlighting his OPS that was in I believe it was in the low 500s. But he it just really capped off what was a season to forget. But I think it was pretty clear he was working on his swing and making some adjustments, and I think that much is clear this season because he has bounced back terrifically. So, Noah, what do you think about Jacob Gonzalez? How he just fared in high A, how he's doing in Double A right now, and how he's just really starting to prove the White Sox right that he was the right pick to make in the first round last year.
Yeah, so I feel like every spring training, the general manager or the manager or somebody goes to the microphone and they're like, "Oh, such and such player had a great offseason and we expect huge things from him this season." And then, by mid-June, it's like, "All right, this guy is the same old player as he was last year and it was all just talk." But Chris Getz went to the microphone and talked about Jacob Gonzalez in spring training. I believe he said he called Jacob Gonzalez the talk of minor league camp at one point during spring training, which kind of caught my ear. And then I looked at his stats, and I've seen the swing adjustment. I mean, if you look at a video of his swing last year versus his swing this year, you can see a difference, and the numbers are there to back it up. So it looks like this might be one of those situations where, the guy got into pro ball, kind of was struggling with his swing, went home and made some adjustments, and came back, and it actually worked for him, and he showed up ready to play. And we've seen some flashes from Jacob Gonzalez this year, and he's gotten called up to Double-A, and he's been hitting even better than he did in Winston-Salem so far. So he's starting to look like the guy with the talent that the White Sox saw at number 15 that they decided to use a first round pick on. So I'm excited about Jacob Gonzalez. If he can end up being a big part of the future, I mean, that completely changes your offensive outlook moving forward if you can count on a guy like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just another example that we should not doubt Mike Shirley in the draft. I mean, that if Jacob Gonzalez does keep this up, that'll be 4 first round picks in a row that he's actually hit on, which, considering the White Sox draft history prior to that, yeah, I'll take that all day. But yeah, no, you said it. Like, Jacob Gonzalez's swing, you can tell he's made a lot of adjustments, and there were concerns about his swing back in college, which was part of the reason why, even though he was looked at as virtually a top 10 lock coming into his junior year, he did slide a little bit, and he was still very productive, but not quite as productive as his first 2 college seasons. And I think a lot of people attributed that to the kind of the funky mechanics in his swing. So you can tell that he's worked hard to fix a lot of those issues. And overall, he is just can't be happier for him just because of all the backlash that he was getting for what feels like the last year. But overall, guy in high A, he was walking at a higher rate that he was striking out. I mean, that's shifted a little bit since his promotion to Double-A, but still his strikeout rate's less than 15% right now. His walk rate has dipped a little bit, but that's something that he's still got a very mature approach. He's still got a very patient approach at the plate. He's got plenty of power in that bat. I think we'd like to see that translate to some more home runs. I think that may just be the last thing that he's really got to work on in terms of some of these adjustments that he's making, is maybe get some more loft on the ball. But he's still hitting a lot of extra base hits. The power is still there. I mean, back in his pre-draft scouting reports, most people projected him to be a 25 to 30 home run a year type of hitter. That's still the type of hitter he is. And honestly, even the reports defensively have been pretty solid, considering there are some concerns about his athleticism and his range. He seems to be handling shortstop pretty well. It does sound like they're going to start to rotate him and Brooks Baldwin between second and shortstop in Double-A, so they want to get both of them time at each spot, which we just talked about with Bryan Ramos. Having some of that added versatility, never a bad thing. There are already some concerns about whether Gonzalez can stick at shortstop long term, so I'm definitely fine giving him some run at second base, maybe even third base if they wanted to. I feel like his bat could profile just fine at the hot corner. But yeah, overall, couldn't be happier for Jacob Gonzalez just to shut up some of the doubters. And I'm just very excited to see him perform this well, and hopefully keeps it up, because him hitting and being a legitimate prospect would go a long way for this farm system. But the other guy that got called up to Double-A as well, who's just been absolutely killing it, even though he's only made a couple brief starts, but those starts have just been something special, is Noah Schultz, who the more he pitches, the harder it is to find pitchers, maybe even throughout baseball, that you can say are better pitching prospects than he is. Noah, what have you seen from Noah Schultz so far? What do you think of him as a pitching prospect, and just how excited are you for this kid? Like, this, he's filthy, man.
My goodness, dude, it's like I can't watch videos of him pitching without smiling. Like it's he just makes those hitters look silly. Some of the sliders that he threw from his start this past Saturday was just disgusting. Um, no, it's awesome to see him thriving. I know high school pitchers are usually super risky. Taking a high school pitcher in the first round, kind of mixed results in terms of general success across Major League Baseball. With some of those guys end up being really good, some of them end up too many injuries or just too many control issues. But Schultz has been great since the moment he put on a White Sox minor league uniform. He's just mowed down hitters. Obviously, we saw those flashes in just like 27 innings last year, and we were hoping it would carry over, and so far it has beautifully carried over. Um, Obviously, the innings are the biggest concern with him. We're not really sure where that limit is for him this year. Something maybe in the 80 to 100 range makes sense, but it's going to take some time to kind of build him up to actually being able to take on a full starter's workload, just from him not really having done that in the past. And they've been pretty careful with him, only starting him once a week. So that's my biggest question mark, is how is the arm going to hold up as he throws more and more innings? But there's no doubt in my mind that the stuff plays, and I'm very, very excited for once he gets it all going and gets that innings workload up, for what he can do in the mound in Chicago in the future.
Yeah, you're spot on with that. I think the innings and his ability to work deeper into games and pitch throughout the season, those are the real concerns with him at this point. And I don't even want to say concerns. They're more just questions about him at this point, just because we haven't seen it. But the White Sox are being cautious with him. Look, he didn't pitch at all, or he missed most of his high school senior season because of illnesses. And then last year he got shut down a little early with the shoulder issue. So he said he only pitched about 27 innings last year. So they are being cautious with him. And I do think the only pitching every Saturday schedule with him, it's a unique idea that I do like, because it keeps him on a regular schedule while giving him a little bit more of a break in between starts. And it saves his arm a little bit. It'll allow him to pitch deeper into the season before hitting whatever that innings limit is for him. My guess is about the same as yours, probably somewhere in that 80 to 100 range is where I would think as well. I mean, even if he can only get 80 innings this year, I would still consider that a win. But man, he is just absolutely killing it down there. And that rotation was already filthy. Now you're adding in Noah Schultz, who is mowing down hitters like it's no one's business. And on top of that, with that 6'9" frame, you'd think that there'd be some control issues there, keeping his delivery in line, but he doesn't walk that many batters. I think he might have only one walk in his two starts with the Barons so far. He struck out 12 in 7 2/3 innings. Only one ball has left the infield since he's been called up to Double-A. I mean, just everything he's doing at that level And before, when he was in high A, it's crazy to see. And just left-handed hitters have no shot against him because that delivery is so deceptive and that slider just goes right away from them. The fastball is even picking up some velocity. Just overall, the development of Noah Schultz has been really fun to see, and he is just one of the most exciting prospects I think in all of baseball. And I'm just happy he's in our organization. Just another Mike Shirley win right there with the draft.
I don't
Um,
necessarily love to throw player comparisons at every player, because I don't think that there necessarily is one for every player. But the name that came up when they took Noah Schultz, and the name that I've been hearing more, is Randy Johnson, just because he looks a lot. I mean, similar size, big lefty, similar stuff. I see it a lot, man, and I don't want to put those high of expectations on a guy like Schultz, but I see a lot of Randy Johnson in him, and that would be exciting if the White Sox have the next Randy Johnson in their minor leagues right now.
yeah, I know those comps were brought up, even pre-draft, just because this tall, lanky, left-handed pitcher. Though that's just naturally going to be brought up, and you don't want to put those types of expectations on a pitching prospect. And he doesn't have quite the same velocity as Randy Johnson, but man, his ability to make batters look silly, it is a little bit reminiscent of Randy Johnson. And you can, even if you even want to take a step back, you could say, oh, well, maybe you don't want to compare it to Randy Johnson, but the other comparisons are guys like Chris Sale, who, I mean, Sox fans are very familiar with, but it's another just absolutely dominant, lanky, left-handed pitcher who can just make hitters look silly. And it's, again, we don't want to put that high of expectations, but it's hard when you see what he's doing at such a young age too. Like, just remember, he's only 20 years old in Double-A, and again, it's only been a couple of starts, but he's just making hitters look silly, and he looks like he is more advanced than any of these hitters who are 3, 4, 5 years older than him. So it's really fun to see. But he's not the only pitcher that's performing at within the White Sox farm system right now. I mean, you can go down pretty much every single level and see positive developments with the arms that are in this system. And before the season, shortly after Chris Getz was named as the general manager, he hired Brian Bannister to head up pitching development within the entire White Sox organization. And does he deserve all the credit? Maybe, maybe not. I think he definitely deserves a decent amount of that credit. But overall, the pitching in this organization is taking a massive step forward. I mean, you look at the entire Double-A Birmingham Barons rotation, all six of those guys look like future contributors at the MLB level. There's guys in the lower levels that are developing really nicely. I mean, Noah, what do you have to say about all this pitching that all of a sudden the White Sox have in this organization?
What I have to say is that I am 27 years old, and I think you are right around my age as well. And I don't know about you, but I have never seen a White Sox farm system this loaded with interesting arms. I mean, they've had some good pitching prospects through the years, but you can look at every single minor league team and you can look at least one or two of their pitchers and be like, that's a guy that could be a big league contributor. Oh, he's having a really nice year. I mean, I'm looking at their top 30 list right now. Obviously, Schultz, we talked about. Drew Thorpe is awesome. Nick Nastrini struggling so far in the majors, but we know he's got the stuff and we know he's capable. Iriarte's looked good. Jake Eater is having a better year. Jonathan Cannon has already been in the majors a little bit. Peyton Pallette, he's been all right. Grant Taylor is now healthy and pitching, and he's good. Seth Keener's been pretty good. Kai Bush has been awesome. Mason Adams, Sean Burke is now back. Like the list goes on and on and on, and it's crazy. And I think some of it, you're right, is Brian Bannister. I think some of it is just a good job of the front office the last couple of years to get these arms in the system. I mean, a couple of years ago, we would have looked at the White Sox top 30 prospects and we would have said their biggest need right now is pitching that is close to major league ready. And they have addressed that through the last two drafts like crazy. They've made some trades where they've gotten it. And now it's like we might have 12 guys that are future big league starting pitchers. And that's a really, really good problem to have. So I love what they've been doing on the pitching end of things. And I've never been more optimistic, I think, about the future of the White Sox pitching staff than I am right now. The offense, we can talk about that later, but I'm very, very optimistic about what they're doing on the pitching end right now.
Oh yeah, I mean it's crazy, and I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take it a step further. I'm 29, so not much older than you, but a couple years, and still completely agree. I've never seen the White Sox have this much positive organizational depth in terms of arms, and it's so refreshing to see too, because that's something that arms are hard to develop and they're extremely volatile. So you the best approach a lot of people would argue is to load up on as many as you can and hope that just a few hit, which it seems like since Getz took over, it seems like that's kind of been his philosophy is just get as many arms in the system as possible and just hope that some of them stick. I mean, first, the main headliner for the Dylan Cease trade was Drew Thorpe, who is he's just been phenomenal in Double-A. I think a lot of us are ready to see him get that promotion to Triple-A sooner rather than later. But just all of the arms in general have been not only have they been loading up on them, but they're all just developing at such an incredible rate right now. I mean, we can talk about the Birmingham Barons rotation all day, but then you go down to Kannapolis and see Grant Taylor, our second round pick from last year, has just been dominant at that level and could, it hasn't been down there for very long, but just is making hitters look silly and just looks like he's overmatching the lower competition. Could see him get a promotion relatively soon. I mean, you can go on and on about so many of these pitching prospects. Jake Eater's another one where last year, similar to Jacob Gonzalez, a lot of fans were down on him, partially because we traded Jake Berger for him, partially because he wasn't really performing very well. He's made a complete 180 this year, even with an ERA that's just a tick above 4. You can even see the field independent stats show that he should be pitching much better than that, and he's striking guys out like it's no one's business. I could go on and on about all of the arms in this system, so I'm going to try to contain myself here before I just go on a rant about every single pitcher in this organization. But it's something that a lot of us Sox fans have never seen. We've never seen this much talent on the mound in this system, so it's just incredibly refreshing to see.
Yeah, I think that the vision here from Chris Getz is, to me, it's obvious. I mean, people can joke all they want about, oh, there's no plan, it's an endless rebuild kind of thing, but I do see a plan here from Chris Getz, at least on the pitching side of things. You know what the market looks like for pitching nowadays. I mean, this past offseason was an indicator. Mediocre starting pitchers are getting 13, 14, 15 million dollars a year. So it's a really expensive market for pitching, and to spend on a guy that's a tier above that, to spend on a guy that's even good. I mean, you're looking at 20 to 25 million. What did Lucas Giolito get? Like 20 something million, and then he blew out his elbow. So like it's super risky to spend on pitching nowadays. And so what you need to do is just like you said, get as many arms in your system as you can. There's a good chance some of them are not going to pan out, but there's a good chance that some of them are. And if you can get 4 or 5 of them that pan out, look at that. You've got a rotation. So do that. Use your financial resources on offense, and you should be in business theoretically. So yeah, I love it. I love what they're doing. I think it's a good problem to have when you have multiple pitchers like in each affiliate that are probably deserving a promotion, but there just isn't a spot for them at the next level up because you have too many good pitchers at the next level up. And I think that's kind of the situation the Sox are in right now. You've got, 6 guys in Birmingham, at least 2 or 3 of them probably should get a promotion to Charlotte, but you've got a couple guys in Charlotte that you got to keep in there. And then down in Winston-Salem, you've got a couple guys that probably could be moved up, but the Birmingham rotation is full right now. So I think it's a really, really good problem to have. And eventually they will move some pieces off the major league team. They'll free up some spots and there will be movement throughout the organization. But it's really fun to watch and to look at these box scores right now and just see these guys thriving.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head with talking about just the contracts that pitchers are getting right now. I mean, a fourth or fifth starter right now is getting what a number 2 or 3 starter was getting 5, 6, 7 years ago. So the price to actually get someone that can stick in your rotation is crazy. So the fact that they're loading up on these arms and a lot of them actually look, at least now, like they could be future pieces in a rotation, it's going to give them so much more flexibility when they eventually do decide that they want to compete. You know, it is the White Sox, so anything can happen. But things are looking up in terms of at least the amount of arms in the system, and it's just something that Sox fans are not used to seeing. So it is great to see right now. Um, so there's one segment that I want to end with uh, for the two of us. But before I get into that, I just want to give all of our listeners a reminder that the Dominican Summer League is starting up on Monday. And the White Sox do have a pretty intriguing roster this season. It is headlined by top international signing Eduardo Herrera. He was MLB Pipeline's 11th ranked prospect. He was the only prospect in their top 50 to receive a 60 grade and his power potential. He is a natural shortstop, but he's kind of outgrown the position. So now he's since shifted over to third base, and that seems like where the White Sox want to stick him in the beginning. There is a possibility he could switch over to first base eventually, but regardless, the raw power should play wherever his defensive home eventually lines up. He has received some early comparisons to a young Albert Pujols, and while that's exciting, do want to preach a little bit of caution. We did see this previously with former top international signing Eric Hernandez, who was receiving some Juan Soto comparisons, and his career has not quite worked out the way a lot of fans have been hoping for, but he is an exciting prospect to watch out for. There are some other prospects that are very intriguing on this roster. We just released an article with the top 5 names you should know in the Dominican Summer League. So that's a shameless plug by me to bring up that article. So please check it out. But yeah, I think there's going to be a whole nother wave of intriguing prospects to look out for once that season begins. All right, Noah. So I want to end this show with one more segment, and I don't have a name for it, but it's something that I want to start ending every single one of these episodes with, where I think that each one of us should give one prospect whose stock is on the rise and one prospect whose stock has taken a dip over the last month, or since this is that I'm sorry, I can't speak. Since this is the first time we're doing this segment, we can just make it for stock up or stock down on the whole season. So, Noah, why don't you start and give me your prospect who's on the rise and prospect whose stock has taken a hit?
I had a really hard time picking just one for prospect on the rise, which is why, I mean, that's a good problem to have. I'm going to do one position player and one pitcher because
Go for
I,
it.
I could not narrow it down to just one. But the first guy I want to talk about is Brooks Baldwin. He's currently in Double-A Birmingham, and he is a name that should be becoming more familiar to Sox fans throughout the year. I know he was mentioned earlier in the season as kind of a guy that the White Sox are very high on. I want to say it was Jim Callis that brought that up at one point, that the White Sox are pretty high on him. And I think a lot of us can see why. Today's June 2nd. He's played the whole year. He's been healthy, and he's currently hitting 367 after singling in his first at bat today. So that's pretty good. 367 average. That'll play.
It's okay.
Um, yeah, Luis Ariz might have something to say about that. But I think it's super telling as well that, and I know you mentioned that there's probably going to be a bit of swapping back and forth, but since Jacob Gonzalez came up to the Barons, Brooks Baldwin has been primarily playing shortstop. I think that's worth noting because Jacob Gonzalez, like we said, they spent a first round pick on this guy. So if he's the one that's moving positions and not Brooks Baldwin, I think that should be an indication of what the White Sox think of Brooks Baldwin. I would say the one maybe question with him is the power. He only has 3 home runs this year, so Birmingham's not a great league for hitters. Um, but there's questions about where the power is going to be at the next level. But the guy has shown an ability to spray the ball all over the field, hit for average, get on base, and he's played solid defense. I think at the very worst, you're looking at a guy that could be a major league utility infielder. And at the very best, maybe a starting infielder, a starting shortstop or second baseman. And then really quick, I want to touch on the pitcher too, because this is the other guy that a lot of people said the White Sox were very high on at the beginning of the year, and we're seeing why. And that is Mason Adams, a right-handed pitcher, also with Birmingham. He's currently pitching right now, and he's lowering his ERA to right around 2.0 for the season, and that's pretty darn good for the upper levels of the minor leagues. So Adams, not gonna blow you away with his fastball velocity. He doesn't have the wipe out stuff, but he controls the ball insanely well. He throws the ball exactly where he wants to throw it, and that's effective. And there have been many guys in the major leagues that have proven that you can be effective without throwing 100 miles an hour. So I'm really high on his upside. I think he's a pitcher. He knows how to pitch, and I like guys like that. Did you want me to go into the guy that's losing stock right now as well?
Yeah, why don't you just go for it?
So for me, and this one kind of pains me a little bit, Samuel Zavala has had a rough year. And last year he held his own in high A as what was he, 19 last year, and now he's 20. And there hasn't been a whole lot of improvement from him that I've seen. As of right now, he went 0 for 4 today. He's hitting 176 with a 609 OPS down in Winston-Salem. It's been a little bit disappointing, and he's still young. He's only 20. So there's definitely time for him to make some adjustments and get it back together. But for me, I feel like he's kind of lost some steam for me this year, at least these last couple months. And I was high on him when they made that trade. So hopefully he can turn it around and kind of get that back, because I do think the talent is there. I think for whatever reason he's just not seeing the ball super well in high A. So yeah, unfortunate that's been the case, but there's still time.
Yep, he's a guy that I'm not giving up on yet because there's still plenty of talent there. But I agree, I would like to see a bit more from Zavala, but season's still young, so he's still got plenty of time to turn it around. Since you had both a hitter and a pitcher on your stock up, I'm gonna steal that and do that as well because I was between one pitcher and one hitter. So I'm just gonna talk about both of them because we can do that. So the pitcher, I'm gonna start off with the pitcher, and that is I talked about him briefly already today, so I won't go too much. But Grant Taylor, second round pick from last year, has he's only pitched about 15 innings so far this season, but those 15 innings have been pretty spectacular. I mean, he started out at the Arizona Complex League. The ERA was a bit inflated, but he was striking out something like 19 hitters per 9 innings. It was some crazy rate, and the walks he was relatively keeping in check. So, I mean, after literally one start with that ratio, they said, okay, we've seen enough. You can go up to low A Kannapolis. And he's made 3 starts in Kannapolis where he's striking out 15 per 9 innings. I think he's issued only 1 walk in 12 innings there. And in those 12 innings, he's got 19 strikeouts, ERA of 150, and all in the advanced stats say that, yeah, that's right around where he should be. I mean, this is a guy who was getting first round buzz prior to needing Tommy John surgery before his junior year and deflated his stock a little bit. But I mean, he was in the same rotation as Paul Skeens, and prior to his junior year, he was the guy getting talked about the most in that rotation. Obviously, Paul Skeens is a special talent, and I'm not trying to say that Grant Taylor is Paul Skeens by any stretch of the imagination. But this is a guy with a lot of talent and the potential to really turn into a special pitcher. We saw the White Sox take this approach with Peyton Pallette the year before, getting a second round pitcher who, prior to needing Tommy John, was talked about as a first rounder. Hasn't worked out quite the same way with Pallette, but it's still very early with Grant Taylor, but the stuff is there for him to develop into a special pitcher. And then for my hitter, I'm going to go with the local product, seventh round pick from last year, George Wolkow, who is just an absolute beast of a human being. It's every bit of 6'7", 240. It's crazy to think that he's only 18 years old. But he has been performing pretty well at the Arizona Complex League so far to start the season. He's hitting over 330. He's got a few home runs, OPS right around 1,000. The strikeout rate, while it's high, was actually he's definitely been cutting down the strikeout rate as the season's gone on. It's still at about just a tick under 40%, which is very high, obviously, and we would like to see him continue to cut that down. But he went through a stretch where every at bat was either a hit or a strikeout. He wasn't grounding out, flying out, like he was striking out multiple times a game. He's already cut that down significantly throughout the season. But overall, this is a guy with massive upside, maybe as much offensive potential as anyone in this farm system, and that probably includes Colson Montgomery. Obviously, he's got a long, long way to go to meet that potential, but this is a guy with massive power potential, and it could stick as a prototypical right fielder long term. So very early, and he's still only in the complex league. So we'll see what happens when he makes his full season debut in Lowy Kannapolis, which I would expect to see that happen this year. But overall, just what he's been doing this year is a great start to what is hopefully a very promising career. And then my stock down is going to be Edgar Quero. And while he got off to a decent start in April, over the last month, throughout the entire month of May, his batting average was about 160. He had a couple home runs, but the WRC plus was, I believe, 65. So he has been in a pretty significant slump throughout the month of May. I think he ended his last couple games, was starting to pick things back up a little bit, and I still am not overly concerned about his ability to hit long term. I think he's a fine hitter. We obviously don't want to see that type of slump from one of our top prospects long term, though. So he does get a stock down from me, but I'm not overly concerned about it yet. But it is something to monitor, as he was looking like he had returned to his 2022 form early on, and that's definitely died down. So just losing a little bit of helium, but we'll see how he adjusts and performs the rest of the season. All right, Noah. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Pipeline to 35th. Before we sign off, why don't you plug yourself, tell all of our listeners where they can find you and where they can follow your content.
Yeah, thank you. You can go to Twitter or X.com. You can follow me at NoahP245 if you want a lot of wild White Sox takes, some good, some bad, some just random, facts about Martin Maldonado's batting average. You can find that there. You can follow me on Instagram, same username. And then, of course, Pipeline to 35th on Twitter and Sox on 35th on Twitter. You're going to want to follow both of those, because a lot of great content will be coming from me and Michael, as well as everyone else over there.
Yeah, your analysis about his batting average being able to pass a sobriety test that was true analysis right there, I have to say.
I just give the people the facts and statistics that they would like to know.
And that's all we can ask for, Noah. But thank you all for listening or watching this episode of the Pipeline to 35th. Be sure to follow us at Pipeline to 35th on social media. You can Download this as a podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you download podcasts. And you can find these uploaded to our YouTube channel at Sox On 35th. Once again, Noah, thank you for joining. My name is Michael Suareo. It's been a pleasure. And thank you all for listening to this latest episode.